Okay, we're going to look now at building our formula for depression. And if you noticed that I did indeed get a haircut since our first video, you were right. While I was uploading, snuck out, got a quick haircut, back to it. Don't have the ability to do that in a regular lecture. Okay, let's talk about we've talked about the actions, we're going to highlight some of the herbs, and we're of course going to build a formula. There are a lot of ways to do this. And we mentioned above when we talked about the actions, adaptogen, your best choice, I think you would want to use here, but it really is the stimulating adaptogens that we're focusing on here. So that's going to be especially rhodiola and Korean red ginseng, and I really like sarsaparilla here. I would say those are our key stimulating adaptogens. And then I would say the next group would be, let's see if I can do it like this. I'll try and circle the next group. So let's do it like this. These ones equals stimulating. And let me try and see if I can do something differently here. This is going to equal more of a chi, and I'm going to say non-stimulating. Not going to be sedating for sure, but non-stimulating. So I would say these check marks are going to be ones that really are best thought of as yang tonics. Obviously, there's an overlap. Qi and yang. Qi is a part of yang, so Qi is still uplifting. But Qi tonics, this is how I differentiate it, and I don't know if it's an official way, but if you can take it before bed and still sleep fine, then it's not a yang tonic. If it keeps you awake and it's stimulating, not a stimulant, but stimulating, then it's a yang tonic. So Qi tonics give you more energy, but don't interfere with your sleep. And yang tonics effectively will. So I'm going to say, is a rough way to do it. We've got rhodiola, Korean red, and sarsaparilla. These I would say, now sarsaparilla, I don't think you're going to feel agitated, but I'll class it. I'll put it in with the more yang tonics. We do know it has an effect directly on testosterone. It's a good herb. I actually use it quite often. Rhodiola and sarsaparilla particularly together. In fact, also with some Korean red ginseng. We also use in BPH, which if you think about it, BPH likewise is a condition of cold, damp, in this case sort of sinking or settling, in this case the lower burner. So the overlapping actions and the overlapping herbs are to be anticipated. So if we call those more of our yang tonics, we're going to call Siberian ginseng, I'll do these kind of in order, and reishi and ashwagandha, more of our qi tonics. These ones I think you could take any time of the day and you would be all right. Now you might say, okay, well, what about North American ginseng and licorice root? I'm going to circle them here, though these are slightly different in that some even suggest, so the strange thing about Pan-XQ is that some say it's yin. You'll read it. Some say it's qi, especially wei qi. This is my preferred way of thinking of it. And some even say it's a little bit yang or slightly warming. I don't really think this is true, but I wouldn't necessarily call it a yin. Does it generate some fluids? Is it a little bit moistening? Sure, but I think of it mostly as a wei qi, a qi and a wei qi tonic. There are other herbs we could put in here for sure. This is a good combo. Why is Gotu Kola in here? Mostly because we don't really have another category for nootropic, but this is a nootropic. And some places class it as an adaptogen. That's fine. I'm pretty neutral. It doesn't really matter to me. Obviously, I'm okay putting it in here, but I wouldn't necessarily think of it as an adaptogen, a primary adaptogen, unless you knew you wanted to add in an element of focus and mental performance. So that's our stimulating adaptogens, and I really do believe these are our primary actions. Euphoric is the next action we've talked about. And we've talked about kava kava often as a single. Doesn't mean you can't put it in combination, but I like it often as a single. One that it's sometimes put in combo with, and this is almost more like almost like a drug user's way of doing it, is if you combine kava with St. John's wort. St. John wort is going to, because it interacts with so many drugs, it's actually going to decrease the processing of kava kava, which is going to increase the activity of kava kava. Now, I've heard of this being done. I have not personally tried it, so I can't say. I don't even know if it would be safe. Probably it's safe, but that's, again, a decision you have to make. But that is a thing that could be done if you wanted. So these are euphorics. The rest of these, chocolate bean, yeah, sure. It's a stimulant, a little bit of euphoric. It feels good. I mean, the reason why people like chocolate, we dream of chocolate, right? So we've got Gotu Kola down here as well. Again, more because of its nootropic or its mental focus, and I'll say calming. It's often used as a meditative herb. We've mentioned cannabis. Be careful with this one. I'd probably say the sativa is actually better indicated here because it's more uplifting. Indica tends to be more down. But I would just say be careful with this one. It could be euphoric. A lot of people with depression are using cannabis in some form, and I think that's fine. I don't think it has to come out, but I will say it's often useful to try having it come out because of cannabis's kind of down regulating or dampening is a better word effects there. Psilocybin, not the place to do a lecture on this. We will do a lecture in our elective course if you take that, where we talk about the psychoactives, and psilocybin's an exciting one we're talking about right now in terms of some of its ability to treat, like we said before, depression, PTSD, some other mental health conditions. Wood betony is an interesting one. Wood betony has, it's wood betony plus borage. These two, you'll see it in some places, and I don't know, I've used it. They seem to be a particular combo. Sometimes calendula is also added in there for brightening the mind and dispelling monstrous visions. You'll actually find that, I don't remember the source, but it is in a couple of the old texts. Sometimes that would be made as an infused wine to dispel melancholy. The wood betony or the stachys is often thought particularly for dream-disturbed sleep and nightmares. The borage and the marigold a little more merry-making and jolly. Do what you want with that. I've tried it a handful of times. I think it works reasonably well to brighten some depression, but I can't say I've seen it be successful in more significant depression. So do what you want with that, but worth mentioning as herbs to consider there. All right, let's scroll a little further down. We've got our next three nervines. And we've got nervine, stimulant, and antimicrobial, antiviral. These ones are all a fine choice. I wouldn't be afraid to put these four into a combo. That's probably about what I would do. If I decided, you know what, I'm going to do, patient's not on other meds, of course, because it's St. John's wort. I'm going to do a antiviral approach. I'd probably put these four together and I'd probably dose it pretty high and then see what happens. Often that's what we want. We want to see some change. Hopefully it doesn't make someone worse, but we want to see some change. So that's a good combo to use there. Up here though, we've got more of our nervines. Lobelia, I like lobelia. Lobelia is, you can feel it. It's uplifting and it's dispersing. In fact, you have enough of it, lobelia makes you vomit. That's how uplifting, that's how upward directed it is. So I like lobelia. I do put it in some formulas here. I think we'll see it in our formula today. And I think that's a fine choice. Mint likewise has an upward feeling. Gotu Kola, this keeps coming up. It's an okay choice. I think it's in our formula today as well. Do as you want. Stimulants. Coffee, yerba mate, tea. We could probably add guarana in here as well. And it should be on the list. I just forgot to put it on there. Ephedra belongs in this list as well. And these are all very similar. So we've got caffeine in these two. We've got guarine here, matine here, ephedrine here. They're all similarly classed alkaloids. And they all are stimulants, true stimulants to the sympathetic nervous system. So you want to do that. You want to be careful though. Obviously you don't have, if these are in your combo, you don't have someone take that before bed. Although I've had people with depression, not because I suggested it, but because they found it helpful, actually take these formulas near bed, and it lifted them up so that they could go to sleep. And I've been surprised, like, whoa, you took that much ephedrine or ephedra before bed? And I'm like, yeah. I even had one person once who took it when she woke up in the night. Now, it wasn't just ephedra, it was in a combo with a bunch of things. But when she woke up in the night, she took her formula and she felt it helped her get back to sleep. I don't know, but that's what I've heard. Okay, let's look at our actual formula that we've put together here. As we say pretty much every time, this is a formula, it's not the formula, but we talk about why we would maybe put this together. And so we've got St. John's wort. This is, of course, assuming no current prescriptions. I think I've said this enough times in the video that hopefully it's stuck. This is one of the only herbs, there are a couple of those, but one of the only herbs where we have a true, not just potential, but we have a true drug interaction. So you do want to be careful with that. St. John's wort, Korean red, rhodiola, lobelia. This is a nice combo. I would say as long as you dose this pretty high, this is a nice combo. If you wanted, I wouldn't be afraid at all to do this. Just take the Gotu Kola right out, and that gives us 20 more. I'd put, yeah, I just do it like this. This is a nice looking formula. I feel good about this already. Whoops, that should be 30. And I would also make this 30, lobelia 10. I look at that and I say, okay, you are not messing around. You are trying to treat depression. You're choosing, and I really like this. You're committing to an action and you're saying, okay, I think this person has depression, and I think what they need is uplifting, dispelling that heaviness, clearing that fog. This is a formula that would do that. This is, I actually, like, I look at this and I'm like, it's a good formula. You could add a lot of other things in there, but this formula is very committed and very clear in what it's aiming to do. So I like it. I would go with this, and I would still dose it like below. This one, I wouldn't be afraid to do this one as a powder. Lobelia is okay as a powder. We haven't used it that much as a powder. But the other three powder quite nicely. Well, Korean red ginseng's a little slow in the grinder, but I would not be afraid to use this as a powder, but I'd also use this as a tincture. No problem with that. There is even, sometimes in TCM, they will put herbs in alcohol, usually in wine, but sometimes other spirits, to quicken the blood. So it may actually be advantageous here. Alcohol, at least in the beginning, does lift things up. So if you're doing this as 2, maybe even 3 tablespoons of tincture a day, you're going to get that effect of brightening. Now, if you're saying to yourself, that's a big dose, 45 mils of tincture, that's a lot of tincture. You're right, it is. It's a lot of tincture. Pathogenic factor is strong here. And you can feel it. Often, this is sort of the feeling of a lot of people with depression, not all, of course, different patterns, is that they're heavy people. Even if they're not physically heavy, they're heavy people that you have to push hard to lift up. We're doing the equivalent botanically. We are pushing hard to lift up. So I like to go big, as you would. So this is 2 to 3 tablespoons per day, taken a couple times in the morning and night. Here's what I would say, though. After 2 weeks, you can change the dose if you want. You also might not want to change that. But after 2 weeks, I would probably even say 10 days, you will know, probably 2 weeks in depression. It does take longer to move things here. And if you wanted to really be conservative, 3 weeks would also be okay. But you will know. Someone will say, yeah, you know what? My mood is better, my energy is better, and I'm able to mobilize. My motivation is a little bit better. If that's the case, and I've softened on this in recent years. I used to say, nope, we give them a strong formula, and then in 3 weeks, they should hopefully not need any formula, or at least bring the dose down. We even have it in here. That's fine. It's a fine thing to try, but I have really softened in terms of if someone has major depression, or even just say moderate depression, and this truly helps. This truly lifts them up. We're using it as a medication, no question. We're using it specifically as a medication, but an effective one, if it's effective, of course, which means, all right, if they have to be on it, they have to be on it. If it consistently improves quality of life, then they can stay on it as long as they need to. Obviously, there could be side effects, although with a formula like this, you might not see it. And this is the other thing, right? If this is alongside of or in place of pharmaceutical meds, which we know most used for depression do have sometimes pretty significant side effects, sexual complications or failures in performance, not least among them. If you can use a formula like this, maybe in place of or to decrease meds, and everything is stable, wonderful. And then, like always, you say, how you doing? Okay, it's been 6 months. Do you want to try decreasing the dose? Do you want to try stopping, weaning, whatever you want to do? And then you see if it works. And if it doesn't, you go back on. Does it become an expensive therapy? It does. Yes, it does. There's no getting around it. In fact, it's more like you just have to get over it. And I know I have to get over it personally because I feel guilty about that. Often the patient doesn't feel bad about it at all. They're like, yeah, okay, sure, I'm spending $80 a month. But you know what? Probably with a tincture like this, it's probably more than that. It's probably more like $160 a month. But you know what? I feel better. And that's worth it. Especially, you could even do it from a place of, if it means they could actually work, that, that cost covers itself pretty quickly. So maybe I'm just projecting my own. Maybe you're like, yeah, I don't have a problem with that at all. I have over time, and I'm actually learning to soften that in terms of if it provides results, wonderful. So there's a formula that we're using here, and I like it. I think that's a good formula. Let's look at, herb-drug interactions. We've mentioned St. John's wort a whole pile of times. True. That's our herbs there. Other effective therapies. Exercise is probably the best one you can do. Anyone can do. We know it. Well established. Regular exercise. I even wrote it in here. Particularly mild, moderate. Severe is a little bit harder, and we get into that cycle again with severe where they lack the motivation so they can't exercise. Because they aren't exercising, that gets even heavier. It's a challenge for sure. Good nutrition is always part of treating depression. We know a lot of people, as that goes down, their motivation goes down, their available energy goes down, it's harder for them to eat well. And it's exactly the same. We see this cycle over and over and over again in so many areas of health where our job is to try and find a way to break this. What can we do that gets them out of this cycle and into another cycle? Or more like, what treatment intervention can we go to do that we go in and then it gets them out? Look at that, it almost starts to look like a little bit of a yin and a yang symbol there. All kinds of things. Fun. Draw a little box there. So it's a tough one. And food is helpful, exercise and health is helpful, but I wrote this in here. They rarely cure depression. And I've worked with numerous patients with depression that they optimize those factors, but it's not the answer. Their answer is not that they're not eating enough vegetables. They could eat more vegetables and it could be helpful, but that's not why they have depression. And you have to be careful not to either over-promise, set someone up for disappointment, or, well, I guess that's the same idea, just creating false expectations. I haven't written it in here, but therapy is very useful, but also in more severe depression, therapy also often has its limits. It's very effective in mild. Therapy for mild, almost always that'll take care of it because that's a different cycle. And often you can break that with mindfulness. So this would be therapy/mindfulness. And I think with mild and even probably that first half of moderate, you're probably going to do well with therapy and mindfulness. After that, I think it is more difficult. A couple of supplements you can use. Yeah, I had to write this in here. The research is insufficient. We have a lot of supplements we use in depression, but the research, in my opinion, really, and in the general opinion, not just my opinion, insufficient to say, okay, use this. The two that show up are vitamin D and omega-3 oils. These I would suggest, and just about anyone who does have depression, they should be on these. Omega-3 oils, that's usually specifically the EPA, and that's usually 1,000 to 1,500 milligrams per day. That seems to be actually a legitimate medicine for ameliorating some depression. Which, I'm not really into supplements, but those are a couple that I would say in treating depression, pretty much always put on the list. Okay, that was a shorter video. We'll wrap up there for building the formula, and we'll be back again shortly with a video looking at the herbs in this section.